These mobs are way too big. But are they? You see, Terraria is a game that showcases its visuals in a 2D view, zoomed out from your character, which makes things seem very small. However, there are certain characters in Terraria that have their sizes based on real life, like the player. And if that's the case, then what about other things in Terraria, like the mobs? The sizes of mobs in Terraria are not really emphasized, especially at first glance. Well then, what if we compare their sizes in 3D? What would they look like in real life? How large would they actually be? I am jpallgraphic, and this is Illustrating Terraria Mobs, Part 2. The mobs that will be studied in today's video are Terraria's pre-hard mode corruption mobs, specifically the Eater of Souls and Devourer. They'll be measured using real-life measurements, shown in a comparative view with real-life things, and illustrated in a comparative view with a more realistic look, all to emphasize their true size. Well then, how do we measure things in Terraria? Well, there's already a given unit of measurement in the game, an accessory from the depths of the underworld, the depth meter. It measures the depth of the player, the vertical height, with its given units in feet. When you go up or down one block, the height difference between one block and the next is 2 feet. Conclusion, one block is 2 feet. And since one block is comprised of 8 pixels in width and height, obtaining the measurement of 1 pixel requires dividing 2 feet by 8, which is 3 inches. With those measurements given, I measured the Eater of Souls and Devourer, and unfortunately, unlike last time, measuring these mobs was way more of a hassle. Measuring the dimensions of the Eater of Souls was pretty simple. It is 39 pixels or 9 foot 9 from tail to mandible, and 21 pixels or 5 foot 3 at its width. These dimensions only apply to the Eater of Souls if its sprite didn't have any other size variations. But it does. The Eater of Souls has 3 variations: small, medium, and large. Or if we aren't ordering in McDonald's, we have the small eater, the regular Eater of Souls, and the big eater. Question now is, how do we measure the sizes of the other variations? There is no information regarding the size variations of the Eater of Souls. And it makes sense. Why would someone research the sizes of a specific Terraria mob other than to make a YouTube video about it? To be honest, they could have gone outside and touched some grass. That would be preferable. But I was wrong regarding the fact when I said that there's no information regarding their size variations, because there absolutely is. We just have to dig deep into the code of Terraria. Now, the question is, how can decompiling Terraria's code help us reveal the size modifications of these 3 variations? Well, through NPC IDs. NPC IDs are IDs that are used internally in Terraria's game code to reference enemies, critters, and friendly town NPCs. Since these are stored internally in Terraria's game code, we could possibly find out their attributes, such as their damage, defense, knockback, and maybe including their size variations. Through decompiling Terraria or Tmod Loader, I was able to access Terraria's source code, specifically the file that we'll discuss in today's video, npc.cs. There's an overwhelming amount of code in this file, but what we're trying to find is the NPC ID of each mob, which there is. Looking at the Terraria wiki, the NPC ID of the Eater of Souls is 6. If I try to search for that in this file, you could see that it actually exists. This is the Eater of Souls, and these are its attributes. Since the Eater of Souls NPC ID exists, it is pretty much a given that we would find the Small Eater and Big Eater's NPC ID in this file as well, which there is. right next to each other. These are the mobs, and these are its attributes. Let's focus on the small eater. The only line of code that really matters here is this. This is the initial scale factor of the small eater, which is 0.85. The regular Eater of Souls stats is being multiplied by the scale factor, such as its damage, defense, life, value, knockback, and probably its size. The same holds true for the Big Eater, with a scale factor of 1.15. This also gets distributed to these given attributes, which probably includes its size, and if that's the case, the dimensions of the Small Eater are around 8.29 feet at its length and 4.46 feet at its width. Similarly, the Big Eater is 11.21 feet at its length and 6.04 feet at its width. If computations don't suffice, I also measured these mobs through pixel measurements by screenshotting their sprite. And guess what? Their measurements were accurate. But that's not all. The dimensions of the Small Eater and Big Eater also change in some secret seeds. But for a generalization, we will be using the getFixBoy seed as most features of different secret world seeds apply here. But now, we run into an issue. The scale factor given to me in npc.cs only involves a specific secret world seed, and not all of them combined, which is what the getFixBoy seed is supposed to be. Basically, the calculations that I made were mainly for the don't dig up seed, and when measuring the sizes of these mobs in that same seed, they are as accurate as they could be, but not for the getFixBoy seed, which means there must be some line of code somewhere in this file that could help me calculate the size of these mobs in the getFixBoy seed. Except, there isn't. I genuinely tried finding values in that file that could help me get those measurements that I got through measuring in pixels, and I couldn't. I don't think they would be in any other file as well because it's obviously for mobs. Like, where else would it be? The liquids file? So we will be going with pixel measurements now. In the getFixBoy seed, the length of the Small Eater is around 50.75 pixels or 12.69 feet, and its width is 27.25 pixels or 6.81 feet. The length of the Big Eater is around 73 pixels or 18.25 feet, and its width is 38.75 pixels or 9.69 feet. Funnily enough, the Eater of Souls is actually the smallest in this seed, at around 45.5 pixels or 11.38 feet in length, and 24.25 pixels or 6.06 feet in width. It is the smallest compared to its variants, which is interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the Devourer. The Devourer is comprised of 3 separate segments: head, body, and tail. Each segment has their own dimensions. In terms of length, the head is 4'6", the body is 3'3", and the tail is 4 feet. Furthermore, the Devourer consists of 10 to 14 segments in total, which means the range of its length can measure from 34'6" to 47'6". And that's not all. It also gets a size change, with its largest version being in the getFixBoy seed. Now, we are not going to rely on the code given to us by npc.cs because of certain issues. getFixBoy. So we will be measuring them through block measurements. It is around 47 to 48 blocks long. Since one block is equal to 2 feet, the getFixBoy Devourer measures at around a staggering 94 to 96 feet. That is long. Here's a small chart of all the Eater of Souls and Devourer measurements. Now, with the measurements out of the way, we need to visualize them. Are these sizes really impressive? Here we are at heightcomparison.com. As you can see, we have the Eater of Souls and its variants with their given sizes. Now immediately, you can see that the Eater of Souls and its variations are longer than the Terrarian's height and the 6-footer. Even the Small Eater, just barely taller if we ignore the tail. Now what's surprising is the Big Eater, especially in the getFixBoy seed. It's probably around 3 Terrarians tall. The mandible is as long as the 6-footer, like it's around that height. A better way of visualizing this is through a picture of me in comparison with the Eater of Souls variants. You probably get it now. Now when comparing it to other real life things, like a bulldog, yeah, that it just does not compete. Even its teeth are probably bigger than the bulldog. So you can see, here's an average car. Yeah, these would definitely wreck your vehicles. And what a surprise! The getFixBoy Big Eater is almost as long as the Eye of Cthulhu. And you'll be surprised, but the king slime is actually shorter than the Get Fixed Boy Big Eater. Even a one-story house is actually a lot shorter than the Big Eater's entire length. In fact, it's almost as large as a two-story house. From that, we can conclude that the size of the Eater of Souls variants could look like this, or like this. I'm glad that these don't exist in real life. And interestingly enough, the giraffe, which is considered as the tallest land animal, is actually slightly shorter than the Big Eater, only in the Get Fixed Boy seed. And just for the sake of it, here's an apple tree, and the White House. Because why not? It's actually considerably big. It's a bit bigger than those windows. And I nearly forgot the Devourer. This is the Devourer at its longest, without any secret seed. And this is the Devourer at its probable longest at the Get Fixed Boy seed. So yeah, this goes to show how big these mobs really are. Now, we have an idea of their sizes in a 2D view. But what about a 3D view? Well, here's a 3D size comparison between a 6-footer and the pre-hard mode corruption mobs, both in the normal and Get Fixed Boy seeds. Let me give you some time to process the scale of these mobs. Now, where is the illustration segment of this video? Well, since this series is mainly about measuring mob sizes and not art, I will upload an illustration of these mobs separately. Furthermore, if you want to see me measure the size of Terraria's antlion mobs, click this video over here.